Hey everyone, it's David Sirota. So there's been an interesting political development that has come out of the bill that deregulates the Wall Street regulations that passed after the 2008 financial crisis. You've probably followed some of this bill. This is the bill that a number of Senate Democrats joined with Republicans to pass that got part of that Dodd-Frank Act that passed after the financial crisis. Now the politics of this, beyond the policy, are very interesting and I think represent a turning point, or at least a potential turning point, in Democratic Party politics. So the bill deregulates part of Dodd-Frank, and this has exposed in the vote on the bill, with some Democrats in the Senate voting with Republicans, this has exposed a rift between progressives and more corporate-friendly Democrats. Now this is a rift that people know exists. But what's different about this is that you rarely ever see members of Congress criticize members of their own party. But on this bill, you've seen a couple of prominent Democrats very explicitly criticize, in fairly harsh terms, members of their own political party. And I think that represents a potential big turning point, where you had in the past the rift between progressives and corporate-friendly Democrats sort of boiling under the surface. Now you have it a lot more explicit. Let me give you an example. Elizabeth Warren, she's the progressive Massachusetts senator who was leading the charge against this bill. She wrote a post on Medium, and she wrote, quote, "Since I called out some of my Democratic colleagues for their support of the bill, I've been taking heat from fellow Democrats. I get it," she writes. "No one likes to be criticized, let alone by someone on their same team. And let's be totally clear, I agree with my Democratic colleagues a lot more than I agree with my Republican ones. But there's a long history in Washington of members of both parties teaming up to deregulate banks, followed soon after by a financial crisis." She also, the subhead on that post was, "Saying Democrats are helping to roll back rules on big banks doesn't make me the most popular kid on the team, but Massachusetts," Elizabeth Warren writes, "didn't send me here to fight for big banks. The people of Massachusetts sent me here to fight for them." So that's very explicit criticism. And a lot of Democrats in Congress don't like it. Similarly, in the House, Congressman Ro Khanna of California, the freshman Democrat, the progressive, he tweeted out, quote, "Why are there 12 Democrats working with Republicans to roll back the financial regulations that were put in place after the financial crisis? Have they forgotten about how reckless Wall Street greed ruined the lives of millions of Americans?" That's a sitting Democratic member of Congress. Now, I recently had Ro Khanna on my podcast, and I asked him about the pushback to that kind of criticism, because what you often hear is if the Democrats aren't united, if they don't present a united front, if they don't pretend that there are no divisions in the Democratic Party, it will be bad for their electoral prospects. And I asked Khanna, has he gotten pushback for criticizing Democrats, and why did he go forward and so publicly criticize Democrats? Listen to what he said.
Now, I had a constituent who wrote to me, and he was very eloquent. He said, quote, "Very depressing that Democrats are not united to fight this bill. Last time working people lost their jobs, homes, and savings. Why are Democrats helping enable this to happen again? Is this article misleading?" And then he actually sent me an article. I mean, he's totally confused, because the Democratic Party that he knew would stand up against the Wall Street crash. And so my view is, if we can't be unified on something like this, which is to say that we are going to protect individuals, protect ordinary Americans from the excesses of Wall Street, from a Wall Street that socialized losses and privatized gains, and we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen again, then what do we stand for as a party? And that is going to actually erode people's enthusiasm. They're not going to be as likely to volunteer. They're not going to be as likely to vote. They're not going to be as likely to do the things you need to do to win a campaign. So yes, I mean, I have been criticized because people say you need to have unity and we shouldn't be attacking our own. And I try not to be gratuitous about it. I don't, name names or personalize it. But I do think that the party has to stand for things and have a clear definition, and this seems to me the core value of what it means to be a Democrat.
Now, what Khanna said is a different analysis than what you might call the unity analysis. The unity analysis says you can't show any divisions at all. Divisions in the party look bad, so you should pretend they don't exist. Khanna is making a separate argument, saying that basically if corporate-friendly Democrats undermine the party's progressive agenda and progressive wing, it will actually hurt the party's electoral prospects, because he argues voters will not believe that the Democrats stand for them. What I think, again, when you step back and look at all of this, I think this represents a real turning point where you have some Democrats increasingly emboldened to criticize their own party when those corporate-friendly Democrats are helping Wall Street pass bills that those progressives say will hurt average Americans, regular workaday Americans. And so the reason I think it's a turning point is because usually those divisions are not explicit, but it's becoming now more explicit. And it should be noted that it's becoming more explicit as we start to approach the 2020 presidential campaign. And my guess is that as we approach that 2020 presidential campaign, those divisions are going to become even more explicit. If you thought they were explicit in 2016 in the fight between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, what's going on this banking deregulation bill suggests it's going to be even more explicit, even more out in the open than it has ever been. And that will at least allow for a very frank and a much more explicit discussion of what separates the progressive wing of the party from the more corporate-friendly wing of the party.